Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Men's health out there is something that I've always wanted to talk about. I've always wanted to speak of. And I have some stories I gotta let out. With that being said, with the month of June approaching, I just wanted to come out here and encourage the men out there struggling with their mental health to seek any type of help from professionals, to families, to friends, or just to find your own way to cope with your mental health. As far as for me, I will say that I have issues with certain things mentally, and I've always wanted to talk to them publicly, but I never had the courage to. Simply because stigma that discourages men from seeking help. And let me tell you something, when I was younger, probably in my middle school, high school days, I needed a lot of help. And I never actually sought it. I didn't want it for a couple of reasons. It's just that the stigma around men, and especially when growing up in a Hispanic household, mental health is not it's not a top priority growing up. And well, let me get my story out there, and hopefully my story can help the young men and struggling with mental health, and especially young children and young parents out there to keep an eye out on their children, make sure that they are getting the help that they need. If you notice anything wrong, anything off, it's probably best to try to talk to them and find out what's going on outside of the house, especially at school. I graduated back in 2011, so it's been a hot minute, probably about 15 years since I graduated. And it wasn't until about 2-3 years ago until I finally exploded. I was having an argument with a family member, and they always wondered why I get so heated or why I get so anxious and start having, I guess, panic attacks or just these types of anxiety attacks. And well, that moment I let it all out and I just couldn't hold it in. And basically what happened was, when I was growing up in elementary, middle school, and high school, I could probably say that my worst experience of my life was probably middle and high school. Elementary school wasn't as bad, simply because we were growing up, we're young, we didn't really have any type of cliques, friends that we would hang out with. Everybody was kind of neutral. I thought I was hanging out with the popular crowd at the time, but everything changed once we got into middle school. Middle school was probably one of the worst times of my life, simply because it was a nightmare. And well, this type of middle school, you had to wear uniform. And back then, well, I'm still in, but back when I was younger, I was chubby. I was very self-conscious. And my parents would follow the rules and buy me the uniform that the school required me to wear. And well, my mom, she went out there and got me the khaki dress pants and red bright shirts and black shirts and white shirt with a collar. And I was short, chubby, and had glasses. I had my hair slicked back. And to make things worse, I joined band, thinking that I had to join band or chorus, but I didn't know you can opt out. But I fell in love with music, and I decided to join band. And I joined band and I played the trombone. So if anybody knows about instruments, that trombone is huge. It's probably a very long piece of instrument, and it's very awkward to carry. So to add that to my middle school resume, it was just adding fuel to the fire for bullies. Anyway, going forward, 6th grade year was okay. It wasn't really bad, but I still had some bullies or whatever starting out. I had an incident one day at the bus. One day we were heading home, and I sat with my cousin. Now, my cousin was in high school. She just moved from California, so she was relatively new to the area. But we rode the same bus because she stayed at my house. Her parents stayed at my house. They were renting one of the rooms. And we went on the same bus, but different schools, obviously. So the bus would pick up the high school and middle school kids. And one day she sat with me, and I had my instrument. just with me. Either, I think I remember having across the laps because it's really awkward to carry. But I don't know, the kid in front of me started making fun of me or something like that. And they started messing with me. My cousin, she just kept saying, stop, don't do anything. And it got to the point where it got really bad. And they started just picking on me and saying names, and obviously I just didn't know what to do. So I got really frustrated and I yelled out the word, you bitches. But it sounded like I said, you peaches. So they started laughing basically. They just made fun of me because I just exploded and I said a word that probably enunciated wrong. So my cousin stepped in and she said something to them, and then they got quiet and they turned around. So shout out to my cousin. Love you. Now, 7th grade was probably the worst. I had an incident back then where, I guess I can tell now. Back then, there was this girl that I really liked. And, well, long story short, we had a class together. We had art class. And she had a class that I had before that. She would attend that class, and then I would come in. And I think she sat 2 desks behind me previously. And I would come in. And then when I came in, I found her agenda. Now, I picked up the agenda, I looked at it, and oh my god, it's hers. It's a girl. And I was like, oh my god, I have class with the next class. And so I thought, man, this is going to be a great opportunity for me to finally say something to her and just maybe get a small talk. So I thought this was a great opportunity for me to start actually a conversation by returning her agenda. Go figure. And so I was so excited for next class. So that class ended and we were packing. There was this kid that sat behind me and he left his books on top of my desk. So when I was cleaning up, I told the guy, hey man, can you take your books? And he said no. He just kept saying, nah man, F you, whatever. So I literally just pick up the books. I put them in the trash can. Not inside, but on top of it. And then I got my stuff, and then he looked at me and he was about to swing. But my teacher, I think it was Miss Richardson, I think it was math, I think, or social studies, I don't remember. 7th grade, a long time ago. She stopped the altercation. She looked at me and said, go. And I don't remember the guy's name. We'll just call him Luke. But he stopped him, and I guess, I don't know what happened. He probably got him detention, or he sent him to the principal's office. Well, I don't know what happened. However, I left happy that I took the agenda and I was going to give it to my crush. We got to the class. I waited to the end of it. And so I approached her. Hey, you left your agenda. She looked at me. She's like, oh, thank you. And she was just, I think, I don't even know what she said, but I think it was somewhere in the lines of, how you been? Something about class. I think we were drawing a shoe or something. But it was maybe about a 20-second conversation. It wasn't really bad. I left that room super happy. That was probably one of the happiest moments in middle school, if I can recall. Simply because I made a conversation with a girl that I had a crush on. And so I was going through the hallways, happy and what. I got to my locker, started opening the locker. I gotta get my books for the next class. And out of nowhere, bam! Next thing I know, I'm on the ground. There was like a crowd around me. And then the kid that got mad at me in the previous class, I don't know, I guess he got suspended or he got in trouble, he got ISS, I don't know what it was. But he came in, he found me in my locker, and he grabbed this huge textbook, probably, I don't know, this thick, and he basically grabbed that book and just slammed it on top of my head. I knocked out really fast while I was on the ground, and then it was just, he kept hitting me, kicking, and everybody surrounded me, going, oh, ooh. And on my corner of my eye, I just saw everybody just laughing or just excited or just shocked with what was going on. And the next thing I know, it was that I think a teacher picked me up and got me up and escorted me to the actual nurse's office. And they took the other kid to, I think the school resource officer came and took him. So that was the last thing I saw him. Apparently, I think he got expelled, actually. And I was at the nurse's office, and they called my mom. My mom didn't know what was going on because she didn't speak English, and my dad. So I had to tell him, and I was crying, and I was like, and they were like, are you okay? What happened? I told them what happened. And then they asked me if they wanted me to come and pick me up, and I just didn't want no issues. I didn't want to cause a scene. I told them, no, I'm okay. The nurse saw my head, and I had a huge knot right here. It's probably a mountain size. But I told my mom, I'm okay. So I went back to class, and ever since then, I guess you could say that my mental health deteriorated from there on, because at one point I was high with confidence, and I had so much courage that I accomplished what I wanted to do, and I spoke to my crush. And then one split second later, I was on the ground, everybody laughing at me. My other encounter that I remember in middle school was pretty stupid, but at the same time, it did affect me a lot. I did carry all that pressure until a couple years ago. And I actually confronted my bully not too long ago, and I'll go into that in details later. But I think it was during 7th grade or 8th grade, I'm not too sure. I was in band class, we were practicing. Our teacher, Mr. Rowell, he told us you get 15 minutes to practice before we start. So I was practicing my trombone, and behind us was the percussion section. They practiced their beats and stuff, but this kid was being just so obnoxious. He was making so much noise. I couldn't really even focus because he wasn't even playing. He was playing with the stick. So what I do, I turned around and was like, hey man, can you be quiet, or I should practice? And he looked at me, and out of nowhere, he grabbed his fist and he just punched me right in the middle of the stomach. My air just came out. There was a moment where I could not breathe for at least 20 to 30 seconds. I was literally gasping for air, which when he did that, I got up, started walking towards the front, that I had to move the chairs out of the way because I just couldn't breathe. I just could not catch my breath. And it wasn't until I got to the front where Mr. Rowell grabbed me. He's like, are you okay? And he just told me to calm down, just to breathe, and finally I catch my breath. And everybody was just I remember people were laughing. Some people were just like, oh no, what happened? I turned around, and it was just more of an embarrassment for everybody. More embarrassment for me. And ever since then, again, my confidence level just went down every time. And I just decided to keep to myself going forward. And it wasn't until probably about maybe a month ago or so, or 2 months ago, that this individual happens to come in where I work. And I did my work, and then I don't know, I just felt like it was just time for me to let go of this thing that was carrying on for the longest time. So I asked him, hey man, can I talk to you? We went to the hallway and we just started talking, and I reminded him, hey, do you remember when this time, blah? And he actually acknowledged. He's like, I remember. And he's like, I told him I just wanted to clear the air, and I told him that I'm done with carrying that, I don't even know how to say it. I feel like embarrassment or guilt or that type of remorse. I don't even know how to explain it, but I just kept for so long, and I told him that I forgive him. I told him that it was something that I just had to get out of my chest, this weight, so I can actually break those shackles and be like, you know what, I've finally said something to one of my bullies. And he returned with saying that he was young, he was stupid, and we were all young and stupid back then, but he did apologize, and I did accept his apology. And I told him, look man, it's no big deal, not anymore, and let's just move on and let's just be friends. And that's what we did. We shook hands, he gave me a hug, I gave him a hug, and then we went our own ways. And now we follow each other on Instagram, and every now and then he sends me messages and stuff. So people can change. I'm glad that I got that huge thing off my chest, and now I can actually start living. But now that I'm older and stuff like that, like I said, I want to make this video so young parents and young kids out there struggling with mental health, and especially in the category of bullies, to make sure just to check up on them, see what they're doing, see the people that they hang out with, just to take a second of your day just to find stuff out for your kids or for yourself. Horrible for me during that time, and that's one of the things that happened to me. And then it comes down to the last few memories I remember growing up in high school. Now, high school was a completely different animal. High school was a point where my hormones were raging, and I really liked this girl. But in high school, you find your clique, you find your group of people. I remember there was, what's it called, the popular kids, the people that wear the Hollister, the Aeropostale, the Abercrombie and Fitch clothing, so that there were jocks, there was the cheerleaders, there was the cool Hispanics, there was the ghetto Hispanics, there was the emo Hispanics. There's just different groups that we had. And unfortunately for me, I didn't really fit in with anybody. I didn't make friends just for the simple reasons that I just don't trust anybody. Growing up, obviously, in high school and middle school, getting bullied throughout those whole years, and I just didn't feel like making friends. I only had actually one true friend, and we really didn't have any classes. He was a lot smarter than I was. He had one of those AP classes, or he had one of those advanced classes, so obviously I wasn't in those classes, so we didn't have a lunch, we didn't have classes together, so really couldn't really be around him and to be cool. Now, my best friend, he's actually a pretty cool, popular kid growing up in high school, middle school. He did sports, he had pretty girls around him, and so forth. And me, obviously, my level of confidence was very low, so I was just usually in his shadow for the most of the time. He invited me places, and I would meet great people, same like him. This is how I actually got into more into church and all that stuff, because the people that we will hang out with, they were just great mentors or great people to be with. But obviously, I did not allow their friendship grow on me simply because I did not trust anybody. But another example of high school was, and this is kind of hard for me to talk to you, and if I get emotional, it's because a long time ago, it took a long time for me to actually say this to my parents and to my best friend and to my siblings, just because it was horrible. But high school came by, I still had a huge crush on this girl. Never had the courage to actually ask her out because she would hang out with the dumbass Hispanics that were always getting into trouble. These kids were always on ISS. They would disrupt the class. They would do drugs outside class. They would be the soccer athletes of the school and stuff like that. But she was attracted to them, and I was just a little fat, chubby kid that nobody really paid attention to. But I had my share of bullies in high school. I had this group of people that every time we would do the class change, they would always either scoop me. If you know what that means, is when they grab your man boobs and they just go up, and I'm in front of everybody, so obviously that wasn't really the fun thing for me. It was for them. They would laugh, they would make fun of it, and I would just tell them to stop, but they continued to do it. And then also some of the pretty girls were be behind me, and they would grab my butt, tap it and slap it, and I would turn and I was like, what is this, a joke, or are they flirting with me, or this is I didn't really know what that meant, but obviously they were just making fun of me and they were trying to get a reaction from me. I didn't really let that get into me, but I would just walk away. But at the same time, I would always be like, man, I don't like walking. So I had a group of people that would bully me throughout the hallways, and then one day I decided to revolt and take action for myself for once in my whole time in high school. It didn't really make me feel better, simply because I snapped and I went back. I literally turned around, I grabbed them by the neck, his shirt, like this, and I literally grabbed him and I put him into the wall, and I slammed him into the wall. This guy was probably 4 inches taller than me, so he was a big dude, and he had this group of people. But when I snapped and I grabbed him and I hit him onto the wall, he just looked at me. He's like, oh shit, Diego, he's fighting back. And then all the other kids were like, oh, let him go, what are you doing? The people did not think that I would fight back. And then I grabbed him so hard, and I grabbed my fist, and I was about to punch him. I wouldn't say I would kick his ass, but I was attempting to hurt him with the most strength that I could gather and just hit him as hard as I could. But something in me stopped me, and in a movie moment where everything's just paused and you're narrating that scene, and at that time I was just like, no, I can't be the same thing that they are. They abused and used physical means to bully me for the fun of it. I was using my physical action to hurt them to gain justice, but I stopped myself because I was like, no, I can't be like them, and I really don't want to cause a scene. I don't really want to get into it, so I just let go, and literally I had tears coming out because it was just so much emotion at that moment that I just didn't want to be like them. So I let them go, and they just walked away, and that was the last of it. And I was, wow, I got a little bit of a breather. Hopefully they won't bother me ever again. It was just for a moment, maybe for a week or so, and then after that it just continued back to my classes because there's always somebody there to bully me. And so my life during high school was very interesting because I would have gym classes, and these gym classes I would never attend. I would never actually be in those gym classes. I would actually come in, and how they would track attendance was they had a note card out, and you would just get the note card and turn it in, and that would count you as you're present in the class. And since gym class, you would have to go into the gym room and change. And obviously I would not change, take my shirt off, take my pants off, and just be almost naked in front of other kids who didn't care what they looked like because they were obviously skinny. And for me, I did not want to, again, start something in the gym room with them bullying me for my physical appearance. Remind you guys, I was, 15, 14. So I did not change in the class, in the locker room. I would actually skip the gym class. I think it was an hour and 30 minutes. I would skip, I would hide in the bathroom. I would hide in the hallways. And there was at one point where I think I spent almost a month at the bleachers. And it was during winter. So you can imagine how cold it was being outside waiting for this stupid class to be over. And every day I would turn in the card. I would walk while class was changing, and I would make my way outside to the bleachers. Now this was at the old Fire Branch High School, that section where it had the red seats. I would actually go in there and I would lay down to, if I would see some administrators walking down the track, and I would lay down and make sure that they wouldn't see me. But I would carry with me an iPod, my headphones, and I would put them on and I would listen to music and wait until the period was over. And during those times, it got cold, and the times where it did rain, I wouldn't go outside. I would actually hide in the bathroom. And that was my day-to-day life in high school. When it came down to lunch, for my lunch break, I would sometimes go in there and grab my food, but I really didn't have a table to sit it with, because all the tables would have their cliques and friends and stuff like that. And my best friend wasn't there, so I really couldn't sit with him. So what I would do, I would skip lunch. I wouldn't eat. I would walk the hallways, and there's times where I would just go to the bathroom and just hide from people because I just did not want to be with them. I didn't want to be around them. And hiding in the bathroom, hiding in the bleachers, hiding in the hallways, avoiding people but I was saying, my experience in high school wasn't the best. It was probably the worst just because of the bullying that they did. And it was dark times for me. There was times where I actually thought the worst. I thought that it'd be better for me just to not be part of this world. And the worst part is that I never told anybody. The worst part is I never told my best friend. I never told my parents. I never told my sisters. I kept that in to myself for the long time. And my best friend always wonders why I am the way that I am. Why am I so quiet? Why don't I want to go out? Why I don't get to know people, or why don't I actually talk. But I just didn't want to tell him because I didn't want to feel weak. I didn't want him to feel like Diego is just a weak guy, but in reality I didn't want any problems. I'm a very caring person when it comes down to my friends. We can say I'm a yes man, I guess. You need something, I try not to say no, just because I know how I feel when you need help and nobody's there for you. So that's why I always try to help people with anything that I can. And it just bounces back, because when I need help, I don't like to ask for help. But that was one of my downfalls, is that I never actually sought help when I was younger. And I told my mom, and she was like, well, why didn't you tell us? And I told her, well, I just didn't want to be a burden to you guys. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want you to make work just to come to the school and talk to the counselor, and then they recommended to go to therapy, and then all this. It costs money, basically. And my parents, when it comes down to those type of resources, they really don't know anything about that. So there it goes. But this is my story, and I will hopefully people watching this, they can see the toll that a bully can do, the harm that it can do to a young kid. But it is what it is. It happened to me, and hopefully my experience can change people out there. And like I said, young kids, young adults, and young parents that have their kids in high school and public school, just keep an eye on them. encourage them to be nice, encourage them to be wholesome, pay attention to them. And then for the bullies out there, take a second look in the mirror. To you guys, it might be fun, it might be amusing to hurt somebody, but in the long run, you don't see the damage that you guys cause eternally. And then sometimes it just leads to the most horrific thing that anybody can think of, and that is basically suicide. And I've read stories of kids taking their life for them being bullied just because they don't know what to do. They don't want to reach help. They don't want to get help. They don't want to talk to anybody about their experiences like that. And ultimately, they take their own life, and that's where the pain stops. But there are other alternatives. Seek help, therapy, talk to your friends, find a hobby, or spiritually, talk to God, talk to whoever you think that would listen, and just take it day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour, and then go from there. And hopefully you can quickly avoid what I went through. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll put out more stories.